Hey there everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for coming and clicking on this video. Thank you for coming and spending your time with me today. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about the Blood Death Knights. So in the last video, we obviously spoke about the Frost Death Knights and how they work and how they feel to play leading up to the Shadowlands. So this video, we're going to be basically talking about the Blood Death Knight in the same context. What does it feel like? Where does it sit moving into the Shadowlands? And how does this class and spec play moving up? So guys, full disclaimer here, this video is not designed to be around percentages or sim crafting or exactly what numbers you'll be doing if you hit this ability and such. That's not what this video is all about. This video is about giving you the insight on the changes, on what is what does it really feel like to play the Blood Death Knight. So guys, join me as we jump straight in and we're going to cover a few topics on this video. So first of all, let's talk about the class changes. Obviously, we spoke about the class changes in the last video, but just to really quickly recap real quick, we have been seeing our little ghoul, little Timmy, has come back as a baseline. We've also seen Anti-Magic Zone come back as baseline. We've seen a whole bunch of new Rune Forges come back as baseline. So generally, there's a couple of baseline abilities, and we spoke about that on the last video. But generally, a few class abilities that have come back have made the spec feel, or the class, sorry, feel complete. No, it doesn't matter if you change in between your Frost, Unholy, or Blood. You feel like you're a proper DK now, and I believe that is a fantastic thing. So what about the spec abilities? What has come baseline to the spec? And realistically, there's only two new baseline abilities to the Blood spec, and that is your Roon Tap and Ossuary. So those two there have come to the baseline to the Blood Death Knight, and I would say that those two abilities on their own, just moving to baseline, has felt really good. So basically, Ossuary reduces the cost of our Death Strike with the more bone charges we have, or the bone shield charges we have. It also increases our runic power by 10. So it is a great baseline. The whole sole reason for this being baseline is that it was such an important talent to take in BFA that it generally is like, well, if everyone is taking this talent, we may as well move it baseline. So the other ability is Roon Tap. Now, Roon Tap moving to baseline means that we get a 20% damage reduction for 4 seconds just by 1 rune cost. Now, Roon Tap itself is a fantastic ability. You can use it prior to the pull of a mob. You can use it when a boss does a massive cleave, or when you know that there's a massive explosion ready to happen, and you can reduce 20% of the damage you take for 4 seconds. Now, this is all damage you take, basically. So magic, physical, shadow, it does not matter. It's all going to be reduced by 20%. So having that baseline is a fantastic core ability. But basically, other than that, there has been no real baseline ability changes. There's been a lot of tweaks to our baseline numbers. Obviously, that is due to our stat squishing and our level squishing. But overall, they're the two main abilities that have been moved to baseline. So with all that said, let's move on to the talents. Alright, so moving on to the talents, there's been a few changes, and the first one notably is on the first row, and Rune Strike has been removed. Now, Rune Strike was okay, however the iteration that they put into BFA really wasn't significant and generally was not taken. It felt a little bit underwhelming when you started using it, and sure, it sort of had its place and its niche. But no, it really got outclassed by Blood Drinker, it really got outclassed by Heartbreaker, so they basically removed it. Now, in response to removing Rune Strike, they have moved Tombstone up from the row 3, your original 58 row, up to the first row. Now, this is okay. I like Tombstone as a talent. I used it quite a bit. I think it was a cool talent if used correctly. So I like seeing it here in the first row. It competes directly with Blood Drinker. Now, Blood Drinker being something that you can heal and siphon health off the mob that you're attacking, or any mob that's in combat with you. Directly competing with Tombstone. Now, Tombstone still basically puts like a damage absorb on you for a minimum of your health pool. So it's going to be interesting to see the numbers and see how it comes out, whether Tombstone is a direct competitor to Blood Drinker or if Blood Drinker is still the go-to. We will see how it goes. Now with Blood Drinker, I never really used Blood Drinker a lot. I was using Heartbreaker almost all the expansion. because generally translating more runic power into more death strikes generally is a better way of healing, but it comes down to gameplay and what you're faced against. But we'll see how this actually turns out. So another change now that Ossuary has been removed off of the original 58 row, which is your rank 3 row there, you also obviously see a couple of changes here. Now the first change is Foul Bulwark is still there, and Foul Bulwark still increases your health by 1% per every bone shield you have. So there's obviously 10% extra health if you really need it. So because Ossuary has been removed in the middle row there, middle column here, you see Relish in Blood has been brought back to us. Now Relish in Blood, let's just read this out real quick. While Crimson Scourge is active, your next Death and Decay heals you for a certain percent of attack power per bone shield charge you immediately gain 10 runic power. So this is cool. This is basically whenever you get the Death and Decay proc, you place it down, bam, you get a certain amount of healing per bone charge you have based off of your attack power. So generally speaking, have your bone shield charges way up to maximum as often as you can, and then throw down your Death and Decay. You get a little bit of baseline healing. Now your blood tap has been sort of brought up to this row here. Now originally, Blood Tap was sort of one of these abilities I never really paid any attention to, but Blood Tap obviously consumes the essence around you. It it generates a rune. So can this become better than, say, Relish in Blood or Foul Bulwark? That is probably going to be up to you. This is also going to be up to the player and the situation that you're in. I personally don't really like Blood Tap. That is my personal opinion. I would rather go with Relish in Blood or even have the extra health with Foul Bulwark. But that is my opinion. You guys can make that decision as well. So moving on, the other change that we do see here is that because of Roon Tap in the original 60 row has been changed, you see that Mark of Blood has been brought up from the original 90 row to now the 35 row in the Shadowlands. Now here's where it gets interesting, because this row here is a very strong, very strong row for the Death Knight. So we still have Will of the Necropolis, which damage taken below 30% health is reduced by 30%. So this is very strong, especially if you're dipping below 30% health frequently. So if you're pushing the boundaries of Mythic Dungeon content, or if you're out in the world and you're doing PvP, whatever it be, Will of the Necropolis is strong if you're dipping below 30% health. Now let's get this straight here, guys. If you are dipping down that percentage of health, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It just means that you're doing certain content, and that provides you with a different aspect of the game. So I would say that Will of the Necropolis is still a strong talent choice. However, you still have the anti-magic barrier here, which reduces the cooldown of your anti-magic shell and also increases the amount of absorbed. This is very strong. This is extremely strong if you're facing a lot of magical damage, if you're faced against say an arena component, opponent, that is, say, a mage or a warlock or something like this. Anti-magic barrier talent is extremely strong. But here's where it gets a bit juicy. The Mark of Blood. Now I've been playing around with this for the last couple of weeks now, and I've always been a fan of Mark of Blood. But basically, Mark of Blood places a mark on the enemy for 15 seconds. The damaging abilities, or the auto attacks basically from the enemies, heal you for 3% of my health, or the victim's health. Now this is cool in a few ways. Let's talk about Mark of Blood real quick. First of all, it's a 6-second cooldown on a 15-second duration. You can generally have 2 Mark of Bloods up at any point in time and keep them up, essentially. That is a lot of healing, especially when you're facing 2 melee mobs or a boss and a few adds. It is extremely strong. Now, the other benefit here is that they've removed the actual cost of this off. This actually used to cost runic power to activate it. I think it was 30 runic power it used to cost to activate. Now, it is instant, no cost, 6-second cooldown. That's it. This has made this talent extremely strong. So guys, I would say have a play around with Mark of Blood. It feels good. It heals you for a significant amount. Now the last bit here is that Mark of Blood also heals whatever that target is hitting. So if you're an off tank, or if you're doing tank switching in dungeons, or sorry, in raids, essentially Mark of Blood's gonna heal your off tank or heal your main tank. You're gonna be able to help out in that regard. So Mark of Blood, have a look at it. Very, very strong for raiding, very strong for, say, mythic content when you're facing single target mobs. I like it. I think it's fantastic. So keep an eye on it. I reckon this is going to be a good one. So the next row, the new row 40 talents really haven't changed, so we're not going to be talking about that too much. However, when now we look at the new row 45 talent, there is a little bit of a change here. So we still have Voracious, and we're going to talk about Voracious here in a second. We have our Bloodworms, which is awesome, and we get Death Pact slotted in there in the middle column there. So a couple of pros and cons here. Bloodworms are Bloodworms. Here's my opinion. I really do think that Bloodworms should be baseline. I've always thought that they should be baseline. They're a core Death Knight thing. They're a signature thing for the Death Knight. I don't think that they should be a talent. I think that they should just simply be baseline, and that's the way they are. But however, this is where we are, and they are still on our talent list, and they still work. They are still fantastic. They're still strong. They still do their damage. They still do their healing. And trust me, I've seen these little buggers do a lot of damage. If you can get a lot of proc chances off your auto attacks, these little guys, they do a lot. Now we've also got Death Pact here. Now Death Pact obviously heals you. You sacrifice your little ghoulie dude, or you used to be able to, but essentially now the Death Pact just heals you for 50% of your maximum health, which is a lot of healing. However, it absorbs the next 30% of your maximum health. And that's over 15 seconds. Now this is great if you're in an oh shit moment and you really need to you need to hit a button to heal yourself and get yourself out of drama. But you do absorb the next 30% of that incoming healing, which is good if you've got a couple of death strikes up your sleeve, or if you've got a blood drinker up your sleeve and you can help your healer out. You can use Death Pact, get yourself out of that oh shit moment, use blood drinker, use a few death strikes. You generally will get your 30% maximum health over and done with well before the 15 seconds is up, and it's okay. But it does, as noted in the Wowhead article, most definitely gets outclassed by Bloodworms and also Voracious. Now here's where Voracious has changed a little. Voracious now applies the leech component, which it normally did in BFA, which is cool. Whenever you use your Death Strike, it increases your leech up by a certain percent. But now in the Shadowlands version, it also increases the healing of your Death Strike by 20%. So not only does it increase your Death Strike healing by 20%, it also grants you 15% leech for 8 seconds. This makes this extremely strong. However, it also makes it a little bit more situational, if so to speak. You can really overcap Voracious extremely fast. If you're not missing a lot of health, if you're not dipping low enough on your health pool, then Voracious generally doesn't become significant, and that's where Bloodworms comes a little bit more into its own niche. So changing between Voracious and Bloodworms depending on your situation at hand would be something that Blood Death Knights would do. However, going for Voracious just straight off the bat and saying that's it, I'm locking Voracious in, no, it is strong, but does it outweigh Bloodworms or even Death Pact in situations? This is where you're going to have to make the decision. My opinion, stay with Bloodworms and maybe change into Voracious depending on the fight that you're faced with, essentially. But Voracious, the change that they've done with it, I like it. Blizzard, thank you so much. So the last talent row here, which is your row 50, basically stays the same. We've still got Purgatory, we've still got Red Thirst, and we've still got Bone Storm. So generally speaking, pick the one that suits you the best. Bone Storm still will heal you and give you a significant amount of healing. However, Red Thirst is generally a good go-to if you really want a baseline ability. Go to Red Thirst. It is fine. Now, Purgatory, it can be great. Purgatory can be absolutely fine in situations. Let's say the raid boss demands a massive cleave and your raid is not up to par with absorbing that massive cleave. Well, generally speaking, you can just solo hit that massive cleave, or take the massive hit to the face and then just try to be healed up out of that. Generally speaking, Purgatory will give you a one-off survivable talent here, but generally speaking, it has its small little place. I don't think that you'll be using this a lot unless you're the sacrificed Death Knight absorbing a lot of those hits. But generally, Red Thirst, Blood, and Bone Storm are the two go-tos. Now, guys, that was the talent changes. Generally, they're the talent changes that we've seen on the Shadowlands changes. So a little bit to talk about there. Now, let's talk about the things I didn't talk about. What's the downsides here to the Blood Death Knight? We've talked about the great things about the Blood Death Knight, and there's only really two aspects that I would really like to talk about here. First of all, consumption. It is still a talent. It is still a little bit mediocre. The problem with consumption here, and it is a talent on your second row, your level 25 row, it does have a place and it does heal you, it does do damage, but you've got to use it correctly. And I still find it very underwhelming with the healing that it gives you, and it's not a significant damage increase, so why take it? It really does, and I use this word a lot, it does get outclassed by the other two talents on that row. However, I do want to play around with consumption a little bit more and see in what aspects does it fit in, where can I use consumption and use it efficiently, because at the moment it just doesn't feel great, and I would really like Blizzard to make this feel better, or simply remove it, or change the consumption to only do attack damage only or something like that. I really don't know, but consumption just generally doesn't feel significant at the moment, so generally you would never really take it. Now, the other thing for the Blood Death Knights is I would really like to see Death and Decay do a little bit more damage. Now, Death and Decay is a core signature ability to the Death Knight, very similar to Consecration with the Paladins. I would really like to see Death and Decay do a significant amount of damage. This is more of a personal want more than anything. There's really nothing else backing it up other than I just want to see it do a good chunk of damage. That's all I want. But they're the only two real downsides or the fall-offs for the Blood Death Knight. So let's quickly touch on the stat weights and what you would be going for. So, the stats for the Blood Death Knight are very simple. Generally speaking, you want enough mastery. Yes, and then you want enough haste, and then you want to put it in either versatility or crit. Now, that is my personal choices. Now, as far as stat weightings go, and as far as what you should really absolutely be taking, technically your versatility scales a lot better than mastery and a lot better than the other stats. So generally, you would want to be stacking versatility with haste followed up by that, or say crit followed up by that. Now, generally, what I mean by enough mastery, when I mean this, is your mastery is directly linked to your healing with your Death Strike, as well as the blood shield that gets put on you once you've healed with the Death Strike. Generally, if you don't have enough mastery, you generally can't get enough heals out of your Death Strike. So that's why I say you need enough mastery. Now, there is a point where mastery becomes redundant, because if you have way too much mastery, or if you just solely stack everything into mastery, every Death Strike will be overhealing you like crazy. Absolute crazy. And then it's just a wasted stat. Now, once you have enough mastery, and that percent, again, I don't know yet, but once you do have enough mastery, you really want to be hitting haste, you really want to be hitting up versatility, and you want to be hitting up crit. Now, there's no one go-to stat here. You really want to have a nice balance. You want to have enough haste that your runes come off a cooldown quickly. You want to have enough mastery that when you heal with your Death Strike, you're not over-healing. You want to have enough crit that you can get, say, Bloodworm procs and things like this. And you want enough versatility. Well, you want to be basically stacking versatility, I guess, after this to ramp up your survivability. Because that's all what it is about. It's about your survivability as your Blood Death Knight. So guys, that's the stats. This is my personal opinion, but generally speaking, having enough of each one of those stats is going to help you out a lot. Okay, so we've come to the last bit of the video. Now, this is basically how does it feel to play the Blood Death Knight in the Shadowlands pre-patch. Fantastic. The core changes to the class and the changes coming to the actual spec itself has made it feel strong, really strong. Now, it was strong in BFA and it was strong in Legion, but now giving us Roon Tap as a baseline ability gives us that little bit extra utility, and it stops us taking significant damage when we pull a boss or when we have to absorb a big damaging blow. the changes to the talent system, the way that it's been just adjusted here, make us or give us the opportunity to use different talents without conflicting with other talents. So things like the old 90 row where you had Voracious, Bloodworms, and Mark of Blood on that same talent row, generally you could never really use Mark of Blood because Bloodworms was better. You could never really use Voracious because you're in a situation where Mark of Blood was better. So you see what I mean by now that changing it around a bit gives you a lot more freedom as a Blood Death Knight. If you are faced with a lot of magical damage, you have an answer to that. If you are faced with a lot of physical damage, you are also you have an answer to that. No matter what situation is thrown at the Blood Death Knight, we have an answer for that now, and I think that that is fantastic. Are we the strongest tank in the game right now? And I would probably say no. That still probably goes to, say, the Paladins, or even the Warriors are right up there as well. But as a significant all-rounder, and if we are, say, facing a boss that just has sheer magical damage, hell, we're the best for that. I can give you that much. So guys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you've enjoyed this video. This could give you just a quick insight on the Blood Death Knight. I hope it helps you make the decision whether you want to play a Blood Death Knight, or whether you want to main it, or however you guys want to. I hope this has helped you guys. Thank you so much for coming and watching this video, and stay tuned for the next one. So guys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, go have yourselves a great day. See ya.